a special episode of Deck Talk. For this episode, I've been joined by Mr. James Walmsley, also known as Wamma. Hi, James. And so, regular viewers from the past will know that Deck Talk is a series where we get a deck for someone who's piloted a deck. They've either done well at regional, store champ, Euros, whatever. Or it's an interesting deck, and we kind of break it down, how it works, what's good for it. This time we're doing something slightly different. Got Worlds coming up, as you'll see from the screen. I've got the big Worlds logo there. And so we're kind of going to talk about what we're going to see at Worlds. So if you're like a new player, or you're not into competitive play that much, and you're going to watch the World stream, which I know I will be, you kind of know what to prepare to see, basically. So we've picked out 3 decks. Well, I say we. James picked out 3 decks, which he thought would see play at the top tables. And so we can kind of break them down so you kind of know what they're trying to do. Now, 2 of them I think they're all fairly straightforward this year.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think the most tricksy of them, the tricks are relatively obvious.
Yeah, whereas obviously I think, previous years we've had, although it seemed like we had Tile Crossing last year as well.
Yeah, this is true.
But obviously the previous year was Lannister Banner of the Wolf one, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that was leveraging a lot of actual kill events, which was actually almost anti-meta, I want to say, at that point. I think we've gone away from those a bit. That kind of brought them back. So potentially this is going to be completely wrong, especially as there is an FAQ that's come out.
Yeah, it's worth saying we picked these decks before the FAQ.
Yeah, so
out of the 3 of them, I'd say 2 of them, if anything, got better after the FAQ.
I think that is a fair statement.
One of them took a bit of a hit, but it's still worth talking about because I think a lot of the principles in that deck will still see play, even if that precise deck doesn't.
Now, the big one for me from the new restricted list is if you see the wars to come as the opponent's agenda, you immediately know there's a lot of tricks they will not be doing.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially because obviously the other key restricted cards, I think it's fair to say, are Breaking Ties and Flea Bottom. So if you see the wars to come, you know that they're not going to be running Breaking Ties. And for me, one of the main draws of Wars to Come was that it meant that you had plenty of space in your plot deck to include Breaking Ties. Yeah,
I think that is a fair statement. That's one of the great things about Wars to Come. Obviously, you get the multiple plots, you get more to choose from, and how many times are you making your deck going up? I could just have that one extra plot, just to have that toolbox, and then you could. But as you say, Breaking Ties was almost a mandatory. I'm going to put it in there. You might not use it, but there'd be times where you could really leverage it.
Yeah, and obviously you can particularly leverage it with Flea Bottom.
So obviously the other ones, which is a deck which might have seen some play at Worlds. I don't think it'd been out the realm of possibility, but was the Mace race with Mace and Hightower. And I'm going to say, I doubt you'll see Mace unless it's in some sort of Marjorie dating, Tinder Marge kind of deck, and then it's probably just there as a Lord, almost to. I don't want to say to kill now, but
I feel like even in that case, I think that deck probably wants Hightower more than it wants Mace because you can just run the other Mace instead.
That is true, and the Hightower is the better card of the 2 by a mile because really Hightower enabled Mace to be really good, whereas you say Hightower is just good.
Where Mace was the win condition, but Hightower was the card that allowed Mace to be a win condition. Yeah.
So,
and I'll say for free, I was considering taking Mace and Hightower to Worlds.
Oh, okay.
I'm, for understandable reasons, now not doing so.
We should say, if you don't know, see, James did win. What's this? Wamma. It's really weird calling you James. Wamma won Euro, so he's off to Worlds. He's first round bye, I'm assuming, as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So obviously, we're not going to get anything about what deck you might be considering to run. Because
I'm actually perfectly happy to say that just because I'm considering so many decks at the moment that it's probably just going to be noise for any listeners.
Yeah, so if you're trying to tech on them, basically all 8 factions are still currently on the pool.
I won't be playing Baratheon.
Okay, so tech for the other 7, and you'll be fine.
I also probably won't be playing Targ, just because I assume everyone would be trying to tech for Targ. And I prefer not to be playing the thing that everyone's teching to beat most often.
So you're going to tech to beat the thing that everyone's teching with?
Whilst also trying to tech myself, of course, yeah. That's the game plan you play. Is you've got to play the deck that everyone else is ignoring, whilst also hoping that they've stupidly ignored it because it beats everything else. That's the goal of every tournament.
This is the goal. The goal is to find that card which is really good but everyone's forgotten about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spoilers, the card in question for me might be Fealty.
Fealty, ooh.
Which I can expand on why when we get to the decks that we've picked out, because I think it's actually relevant for all 3 to an extent.
This is this is like when I won a tournament thanks to Kraken's Grasp.
Nice.
And my opponent had to actually read the card because he'd forgotten it existed.
Yeah, there's nothing sweeter.
Yeah.
Especially, my favourite one I had that was when the very first tournament I played Builders in. I had a game against Tamas, and Tamas had to read Brandon's Gift, and it's like the Night Swatch guy even doesn't know what this does. That's how out of there this deck is.
Yeah. Let's not talk about ruining the meta, Matt. Okay, so the first deck we're going to cross, it is a Tyrell deck, but it's not a Tyrell deck. It's just the best deck of this type I could find on FrameDB.
That green bit could be any colour.
Yeah, and it's actually something I hope they kind of do at some point, is let free folk just be free folk, just for neatness more than anything else. My OCD can look at it and goes, not Tyrell, but it says it is.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the free folk, which is the new hot. It took down, I forget the name of the Road Starlock event now.
Varberg Morghulis.
Varberg Morghulis, which if they weren't playing a best out of 3 final, it wouldn't have won. No. But obviously, them be the rules.
That tournament, perhaps especially of note, in that it was like a 30-odd something event, and there were 4 free folk decks in the field, and all 4 of them made the top 8.
Yes. That one I don't think's gone up though. Those ones. So the one I found was from the was it Zaragoza Regional?
I think I'm right in saying that all 4 of them were this deck.
Oh, okay. So
I believe I'm correct in saying that.
In all fairness, I don't think there's massive differences between it from looking at this and remembering the stream I was watching.
Yeah,
this doesn't
certainly the winning deck was this. I think it was Tim Josephson who won. He announced, when he was asked on, in the interview during the Swiss, is it this list? He said yeah.
Okay. So it's basically the same list, but what comes second at regional? Basically, it's won a Road to Starlock event, which is, I'm going to say, probably the equivalent of a regional, really. Ish.
Yeah, depending on which Road to Starlock event, it's often more prestigious than a regional, I'd say. Somewhere in between regional and nationals, I guess. So,
so obviously it's came on, and obviously the Road to Starlock event we're watching, it only came out on the Thursday before?
I think it had like 1 week in the meta, and then,
Yeah. So, obviously, this is literally the new hot, so because the last pack is the only pack that enabled it. What's this deck trying to do, and why is it being so good then?
So the free folk, for those who aren't familiar with it, basically means that you get to do double claim on one of your challenges. You get to do the claim of one challenge, and you get to do the claim of another challenge. Not as what I thought when I first read it, replacing the claim. You get to do both.
Yeah, that's actually how I initially read it as well. So,
yeah. Because it's like you just see New York actually how to apply the claim of another challenge type. Your brain kind of fills in the word instead on the end, but then you reread it and you're like, oh wait, no, this is a reaction after you've already applied the claim.
Yeah.
So yeah, the trick to the deck there is perhaps understandably lots of claims. So if we look at the plots, we've got political disaster and then 6 2-claim plots. And
I'm assuming political disasters, they've got something which is slowing you down. So, for instance, it's a Night's Watch deck, and they've got the gubbins out to slow your attack down.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously with two claim, the idea is that round one, you've got to successfully defend all three challenges. Otherwise, you are eating two claim military. And if they can win the two claim military and one of the others, then you're eating four claim military.
Yeah.
And the deck is just trying to blow you off the board, basically. And if it wasn't for political disaster, one of the sort of the obvious counters to that would be, okay, you're going to try and just attrition my board away. And if I don't play characters, you're going to go after my hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put down a bunch of locations, set myself up on the backboard where I'm going to be better than you because you're not running many. And then I'm going to valley your stuff away and just try and reflood after that using the economy that I put down.
Yeah.
And political disaster says nope.
Yeah, not unless you got very lucky with your dupes.
Yeah.
You're just, as you say, it's you can't kind of play the waiting game and hit them later. Most of this is quite a low cost curve as well, so it seems to bounce back from resets fairly well. Most of the deck is 1, 2 or 3 cost.
Yeah, we've got the rattle shirts. I guess are the only important character above like 3 or 4 cost.
Yeah.
Like there are some other characters above that, like Varamir and Mance and 1/1. But those are more designed to be brought in by the last of the giants.
Yeah, so they come in for that one big, that sort of to boost the challenges for that one turn, and then whereas and when you need them. Obviously,
Yeah.
And if they're all one-offs, you don't really care if they're dead afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. And the last of the giants essentially says, I lose 2 cards from hand. But the free folk means if you're playing that on a 2-claim round, you're spending 2 cards to get 4 claim worth from it, which, that's a net 2 gain for you.
Yeah. Obviously, it should be pointed out that this obviously can only run neutral cards. As I've found out from refilling my binder recently, there's a lot of neutral cards now.
Yeah.
A lot.
Every single chapter pack is 2 of each faction's cards to get to 16, and then 3 neutrals and a plot.
Yes.
Sometimes 2 neutrals and a gender and a plot, but
yeah,
the neutrals fill out quicker than the other factions.
And obviously they've had some good ones. Obviously you've got Six Skins, which is quite new for this cycle. He's worked really well for this gender because obviously he gives you the ability to pick and choose the icons you need, but also more importantly, stealth on the power.
Yeah, and I mean, power is the icon the deck lacks a little bit compared to the others, so that's almost always, in my experience, the choice that you make with Varamir in this deck.
Yeah, looking at it, Fun Enough Intrigue is actually the one that's highest, but I guess that's probably some of the other neutrals.
Yeah, a lot of the Wildling non-uniques have intrigue icons, like notably the Wildling Bandits and the Wildling Scouts and the Northern Refugees that are all 2 cost, and there are 3 copies of all of them in here.
And obviously you've got one of my favourite ones, the Crow Killers, which are just phenomenal in this deck.
They really are.
Because
that's a thing worth doing, looking at the reserve line on those plots.
Yeah.
4-4-4-4-5-5-0.
Yeah, on the win or you die turn, if your opponent's played anything that isn't win or you die, they're not kneeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so yeah, this has been the new hot. Obviously you've got the Werewood Bow as well, which is just means defending against it becomes even harder if they see a few of those.
Yeah, obviously if you overcommit to make it so the Werewood Bow doesn't punish you, then they just don't use the Werewood Bow, and then you have to overcommit on the next challenge. And so they essentially, as long as you haven't triggered them yet, they're adding +2 strength to every single challenge you do.
And I've used these before in a Ranger Crossing deck. And yeah, as you say, it just messes your opponent's challenge maths. And as you say, you either overcommit or and then you say that just leaves you so open. Man, this is going to do some damage. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, the only reason I could see this not being pretty reasonable force at Worlds is that there is a certain attitude in the Thrones community I've noticed of people sort of poo-pooing the agenda. And I can understand why, because it does play the game very differently from a lot of decks. And also, if you're a faction loyalist, then obviously the agenda immediately just feels wrong to you.
Yeah.
So I completely get people's sort of objections to the agenda, but I think a lot of people therefore are sort of taking an attitude of, oh, well, I don't want to play Free Folk. You know, I don't want to just lose to it, but I don't want to play it. So I think that it might have a sort of an image problem that might keep it from being seen as much as it deserves to be seen based on its pure power level.
Is this coming the new Lanny Dragon?
Maybe. No, because Americans fully embraced Lanny Dragon.
That is true, actually.
I'm interested to see how much Free Folk there is. That I think out of everything at Worlds is going to be my biggest question mark of how much it's embraced, because I could see it like if you treated it just like any other deck and decided whether or not you're going to play it based purely on power level and not on, you know, how it makes you feel, then I think it could easily be, you know, like a good like 15-20% of the whole field. I have a suspicion it will probably be, you know, less than 5% of the field, but we'll see. And
I guess the thing I might look forward to is like last year. What was it? Was it the first? Because obviously there's 2 days of Swiss if you don't know the format. And on the first day of Swiss, lots of people turned up with Hyper Viper.
Yes.
And which was obviously completely illegal deck now, but obviously was one of the combo decks which would win on turn 3. And I think when Hyper Viper normally won, could win on turn 2, but normally on turn 3. Yeah. And and then there was always a wonder of how many people who were going to the second day would tweak their decks with some of the counterplots for it. And also on the second day there was practically no Hyper Viper at all.
Yeah. I think that's in large part due to it being one meta that all took Hyper Viper together.
Yeah.
And it just happened they were all playing on the first day.
I'm wondering though if there could be something similar with Free Folk.
Possibly. I've heard rumours. I don't know whether this is true or not, so I might just be spreading misinformation on your channel. So apologies for that.
That's fine.
But I heard a rumour that FFG are going to insist on everyone submitting their deck lists before day 1A.
Oh, okay. If that's something they probably should do, because otherwise, obviously...
Yeah, it just makes sense. Then you can still scout, but you can't tweak based off your scouting.
I was about to say, and it's not as if there is a community renowned for scouting. Just realised one thing though. If you're looking to get in the game a bit cheaper, this only needs 2 core sets.
Oh, nice. just for the 2 Milk of the Poppy, I guess.
King's Roads and Roads, because obviously
you get 4 of those in each core set, so you only need 1 for them.
Yeah, borrow some. In fact, if you could borrow some Roads and King's Roads and Milks of your mates, and they will have quite a few. Middle of the milk, so you might not buy any core sets. Cheap way of getting to the game. There you go, guys.
Oh no, you'll need to borrow 2 Winds of Winter as well. I think that's what is pushing it to 2 core sets.
There we go. So
and then the only other thing you'll need to borrow is a faction card, and it won't matter which one.
Yeah. And again, you get 3. If anyone's got the whole collection, they'll have 3 of each. I don't think they'll care too much.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's Wildlings. I guess just quickly, what do you do to stop them?
So their game plan requires that they dominate the board, right? Because they don't have any targeted kill in the deck, and they don't have any reset in the deck. The only way they can control the board is by eliminating it through challenges. So the way to handle that is to either play a deck that can just sort of, you know, use tricks to counter the challenges. So like, for example, Martel, Martel has both Burning on the Sand, which will reduce the claim to 0, both for that challenge and for the potential Free Folk reaction.
Ooh.
And then you've got Vengeance Ferelia, which can obviously not only mean that you don't eat the 2 claim military or intrigue, but that the opponent does instead. So I think that's one route to go down. Another route is one that we're going to cover in more detail with one of the other decks, which is to use effects that get characters into play on the cheap, and to treat your own characters somewhat more transiently. So sort of saying, yeah, maybe you'll get a 2-claim military through against me. I'm not that bothered, as long as I can keep building up my own board while like letting you kill these characters that were going to disappear at the end of the phase anyway. And then all you need to be able to do is to survive 1 turn of that sort of strategy. and you're golden. Like Dario Naharis was particularly good in one of the matches at Varberg. We'll talk more about Dario in a moment, but
yeah,
he basically, the short version for those not familiar, he can take control of your opponent's ally, mercenary, or companion for the challenges phase. And so the Targ player went in with Dario, won a challenge, stole a Northern Refugee because that's an ally. Stood Dario, went in for another challenge, stole a second Northern Refugee, and then the free fight player going second is looking at the board and going, okay, well, I mean, I can win a 2-claim military, but I'm only going to be killing my own refugees.
yeah, that's a good way of doing it. I guess the other way I've been looking at is Martel icon removal, and then I kind of look at that. You say and then with the Vengeance 3D as well, but it's a lot of pieces you've got to hope to get quite early on.
It is. The other thing that neutral decks kind of almost by definition suffer for is draw. So the only draw in this deck is Varamir Six Skins if you give him insight, and the you win or you die. I believe that's everything.
Was it Dala?
Oh yes, Dala. Yes, of course. So if you can control Dala, or if the free fight player simply doesn't see her because she's 3 copies, but it's still no guarantee you see 3 copies of a card when you don't have very much draw. Then, like, if you can eliminate their hand, and like bait out the you win or you die, and then reset the turn after, then they're just in top deck mode, and there's potential there as well.
Yeah, and that's one, especially with the reserve as well. They're going to be, if they can't play out enough cards turn 1, they're going to be quite low on cards.
Yeah, because at most they'll have 5 cards in their hand.
Probably 4. I think that's normally I think it was when I was watching the Varberg stream. He was normally going down to 4 cards on turn 1.
Yeah, it's usually the Long Winter is the opener.
Yeah, just because it's got slightly more gold than the Winter.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. This deck is crying out for gold. The plots are very low. And I can remember from Core and Cycle 1 days, when you're relying on King's Roads, if you see a King's Road, it's great. But if you don't see the other economy to go with the King's Roads, you run out of economy really quickly.
Yeah. Sorry, you go.
I was going to say, it's something you don't see these days because now the other factions have got, Arbors, we've got the, the like Neil and
Limited.
Yeah, the Sabres Bay ports, and now we've got stuff like the Northern Armory. So there's other economy options, and King's Roads, unless you're playing Crossing, aren't really seen that much anymore.
Yeah. I wonder then, does that mean that a potential counter to this could actually be like an aggro choke build?
Maybe a winter build,
like
maybe.
House of Red Door, White Tree, or Kings of Winter.
Potentially, actually.
Open with famine.
Something like that. There was I don't think it wouldn't hit this deck at all, but I was watching one of the regionals on Rob's gaming room. I can't remember what it was, and Martel Winter got to the final.
Nice. Is that using the new non-limited to boost their reserve?
Yes, and also using was it Doran's Behest on turn 1, and quite often flipping it into naval superiority, which obviously has not been seen for a long time, and just crippling the economy from turn 1, and then or obviously would flip into race in the mist to just strip their hand. And just lots of effects. Breaking ties to bounce the economy. I think economy is normally back. Basically, he just focused on them having no board and not being able to reflood afterwards. In fact, I think one of the games on turn 3 or 4, his opponent started the board with no cards in play. So the round with no cards in play. So yeah, so that's the choke ability that had. I'm not saying that that's a great strategy. Because it's definitely quite swingy, especially with a lot of summer plots being opened. As open as obviously the classic being, the summer harvest, Time of Plenty, being a very common opener. And obviously not for this deck in particular, but this deck would have no real counters to being choked like that.
Yeah.
So obviously, although naval would do nothing to this deck.
No. Yeah.
As a bit of a counter.
Are there any kingdoms or edicts in the deck? Political disaster. If you catch political disaster.
There we go. That's what you want.
The last deck I'll highlight as a counter to this one is a defense build. So like one of the decks that I was considering for Worlds runs the Jon Snow from the deluxe box, the military intrigue stealth one, and he can basically single-handedly, maybe with a little bit of backup, he can win 2 of the 3 challenges on defense.
Yep.
And then as long as you can then defend the power challenge with the rest of your characters, then that just puts a stop to the deck essentially.
I'm kind of that's actually one I've been considering, and then you whack in both for the watch, and if you do the fire that burns,
nice.
And then you just if you're really worried, or turn 1 you do for the watch. Well, that's one, maybe not turn 1, but potentially. And then obviously the first challenge you don't care. Now they've only got 2 challenges to try and get that claim off. And they've got to win. And then the other one was Eamon as well, because Eamon can help take out some of the claim. Yeah,
I mean there was just after Euros there was a deck that's published. The Super Steward deck that one of the French guys, Argenteau, had basically been playing, non-stop for like a year at that point. But he finally decided to retire and post it on the grounds that, with breaking ties everywhere, it was just that, too weak.
Yeah.
And with breaking ties not completely gone, but certainly severely reduced.
Yeah,
that is a very good deck right now, and that, was Night's Watch Reigns, all the stewards, and running the fire that burns, and all a Game of Thrones. If you can force them into not being able to do any other challenges until they've won the intrigue, that can be really good.
Yes, there's definitely counters out there, but I think all of them suffer from the fact of the Wildling player, also Free Folks, I should say. I think that's how they prefer to be called. Free Folks player can really leverage that military turn 1 and clears your boards. It's then hard to come back.
Yes, that's the key thing. You need to either play a deck that doesn't care about playing round 1, or that can consistently, make it so that they don't get eaten alive round 1.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. But that's the Free Folks. So I would be shocked if you're not seeing at least some of this at Worlds. And I imagine it might... I don't know. I assume it might make the stream just because it's quite new.
Yeah, FFG will probably want to show it off.
I think it might be like Varberg, where everyone's like, we want to see Free Folk. And then we saw Free Folk and went, we don't want to see them anymore. We're done, thanks.
Yeah. My guess is that out of all the decks at Worlds, this one won't be seen that much in the overall field, but what is there will do well.
Yeah.
And it might be one of the sort of highest densities of like streamed games to deck type.
Yeah, I know you mean. Yeah, I know you mean. Overrepresented on the stream compared to how few might be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but cool. So let's say that's the Free Folks. So now we're going to go on to one of the counters which you... and just damn right good decks in the moment, which you've kind of already mentioned, which was the Targ Crossing. So there's a few slight variants of this. We're picking the UK national winner, not because we know him.
Former co-host of yours on the Southern Bannerman.
Exactly, former co-host and just downright good guy. And I did love your chat with him on... I should actually say, obviously, Wamma has his own podcast. How rude of me not to plug that. So if you are looking for something to listen to, is Listeners' Questions, and a whole podcast literally made up of listeners' questions.
The hope basically being that kind of like this topic we're talking about now, that it can sort of be a bit more new player friendly, in that a new player can look at the name of the episode and immediately know whether it's worth their while listening to it or not.
And obviously I love the fact we were talking about on that is the fact that Joe had never made the cut at a regional. Yeah. And won Blackwater Bay and UK Nationals in about a 6-week period.
Yeah. He's had a good summer, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. So I'll see if Joe, you're watching. Congratulations. Again, I've obviously already said it to him many times. So this is Tile Crossing. Now, obviously, the first thing you're going to go, everyone might go is, "Oh, Tile Crossing, that won Worlds last year. How boring that the same deck is still doing well." Well, this pretty much has nothing to do with that Tile Crossing deck, except the fact the house and an agenda.
And 2 heads on spikes.
And 2 heads on spikes. That is fair. But otherwise, this is a completely different build. There's no Jakaris. The dragons are just there because they're good, cheap characters. So, so what is the key to this one then? I guess is the idea?
So I guess before we get into the specifics of this deck, I just want to highlight that if you're listening to this and you're thinking about Worlds, what you'd expect to see, this is the #1 deck. So I did a quick count of recent tournaments that are sort of like nationals level or higher, as it were, in Jousting Pavilion. And I've got the list in front of me, if you don't mind me rattling it off.
Oh, no, please do.
So this is the event and then who won the event. So we got UK Nationals, Targ Crossing, Germany Nationals, Greyjoy Crossing, US Nationals, Stark Crossing, French Nationals, Targ Lion, Hungarian Nationals, Targ Crossing, Hungarian Nationals, Stark Crossing, the Siege of Marine, Targ Crossing, Czech Nationals, Targ Crossing, Varberg Free Folk, Polish Nationals, Targ Crossing, the Battle of the Bay of Crabs, Targ HRD Marine, Queen of the Andals, Targ Wars, Siege of Highgarden, Targ Crossing, Italian Nationals, Tyrell Alliance, Greek Nationals, Targ Crossing. So out of 14 tournaments, 8 of them were won by Targ, and 5 of them were specifically won by Targ Crossing.
And of the ones that weren't by Targ, a lot of them also had the word crossing in the title.
Yeah, out of the 14 events, 12 of them were won by either Targ or Crossing.
So
or both.
Yeah.
So this is definitely the meta deck, and of course all of those events were before the restricted list, which took out some of the cards that were actually quite good at countering this deck.
Yeah.
Whilst not taking out a single card from this deck, it restricted the only Flea Bottom from this list, and since the deck wasn't already running a restricted, it's just now running Flea Bottom as it's restricted.
So obviously, Breaking Ties, I assume, was a good counter for this.
Yeah, simply because one of the key cards in the deck, which we'll get to in a moment, is Hisdar. He is both expensive and not loyal. Yeah,
and obviously, now I've been, as I've talked about before, with you off channel, I've been using it. I've not been using Crossing because I'm too cool for that. But not really. I want to try some new cards. So I've been doing Red Door Marine, which is a similar process. It probably just isn't quite as fast, but it's almost as fast, and it's been quite fun. But they're both pretty much the same principles, which is you get characters out, get cheap characters out in multiple different ways. You can flood the board. Most of the resets, bar Valor, don't really hurt you that much.
Yeah.
And because most of your stuff you're flea bottoming in, you got your stuff can come out the discard pile. Only one of the characters doesn't like being in play and being discarded. Otherwise, they don't care; they get discarded. There's a lot of pieces that work together to make this a very efficient machine.
Yeah, essentially for me, efficiency is the word to use for it. It's just what are the most efficient ways of getting characters on the table to win challenges with, to get the agenda going, to get renown, to get claim. So I think the key cards in the deck, at least for me, are the ones that let you cheaply do stuff. So first of all, in the characters, there's Aegon Targaryen.
Yeah.
So he shadows 3. In practice, often shadows 0. We'll get to that. And he lets you fetch an army or mercenary character. So the army or mercenary characters in the deck are Dario Naharis, who we briefly mentioned in the Free Folk section.
Yeah.
Who's a big expensive 7-coster, but he's 6 strength. He can swing a turn because he can take control of the opponent's characters. If they don't have any characters of the named traits, then you can stand your own characters, because you've got a fair few allies, companions, and mercenaries in this list. And yeah, he's just all round very good, especially now that he can't be or not can't be, but won't be breaking ties as often as he was.
Yeah.
You've got Dothraki Honor Guard, which is a big 10 strength beat stick. It gets -1 strength for each card in your hand, but as we'll cover, that's not a major downside for this deck.
No, not at all.
And then the other main target for Aegon is Second Sons, which was in the deck from last year. Basically, 6 strength Stompy Body. It gets discarded at the end of the phase, but Aegon was returning it to hand at the end of the phase anyway, so you're kind of getting round the downside.
And worst case scenario, it does get discarded in the phase. You have got this other card called Flea Bottom.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty good target for that.
Yeah. So yeah, Aegon gets you cards into play for free. You've got 3 Freedmen, which come into play. They're not that great as characters, but they come into play for free if you win a challenge by 5 or more strength, which, as I understand it, is relatively easy to do in Crossing.
It is, especially, and obviously the other great thing the guys have got, as we talked about before with the Free Folk, if they do manage to get one of those challenges through, well, I know it's dying first.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Then one of the big new key cards of the deck is Hisdar Zolarak. So he's a very expensive character, but boy, does he pay for himself quickly.
Yes.
So as an action, you get to discard a card to reduce the cost of something by 3. So we've just seen the Freedmen that you can discard essentially for free, as it were. There's also Missandei, who when you discard her, she comes into play. And there's also Marine in the locations that gives you essentially some free cards where it doesn't matter if you discard them because they weren't going to stick around anyway.
Yeah.
So typically with this deck, you will trigger him at least once a round. Often, if you've got Aegon in Shadows, you'll trigger him twice a round. So people, talk about how great the Arbor is, and rightly so. Like, +3 gold a round is a really good effect. But Hisdar can quite consistently be +6 gold a round.
Yeah, and it's also on this effects that in a lot of other houses, he probably wouldn't be quite as good because there's less cards you want to discard.
Yeah.
Whereas Targ love discarding cards.
Yeah. Discarding cards from hand is definitely a Targ theme.
Yes, and there's so many cards which either work well with Flea Bottom or can come out the discard pile or, as you say, just like being discarded.
Yeah. Like a really, really common way it goes with Hisdar is you'll have him on the table, you'll trigger him discarding Missandei from hand. Missandei will come into play for free. Yeah. That will reduce by 3 the cost of bringing Aegon Targaryen out of Shadows. Aegon Targaryen will then come out and bring Daario Naharis into play. And so, for the cost of literally nothing, you've now gained 4 new cards in play.
Yeah. And
that's not like some best-case dream scenario. That is a really common scenario in this deck.
As I said, there's the amount of times I've been playing it and I've had Missandei and I had Quoth in hand. And your opponent's looking at the board going, oh, there's only 3 characters there. Well, I'm just going to discard these 2 cards. One of them is Missandei, who's then going to come into play. And then you get Quoth for free.
Yeah.
And
so we move on to those. Like Missandei we've already covered. She's the same stats as, like a Courtesan of the Rose or a Scheming Septon or whatever else. Like, she's not a bad character anyway. But then just getting her for free is just so good. And then one of the best ways of getting it free, as you were just saying, is Quotho, who the cost of bringing him out is just discarding 2 cards from hand, and then he's a 5 strength Bicon, which in Crossing is really nice. Yeah,
and I think that's just quite surprising. I think Intrigue, I was about to say, would be quite one of the harder challenge types for them. Actually, Military's the one that's lowest.
I think that's just because it's running the 3 Freedmen and the 3 Missandei and the handmaidens like Iri and Jikwi and so on.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the more important characters from a challenger's perspective, so not counting Hisdar and Aegon, I think most of them have military icons. But yeah, the chart kind of lies a little bit in terms of what it prioritizes.
I guess because obviously it doesn't. Duplicates aren't counted. So when you've got the free Daario,
duplicates aren't counted, and also the strength of the characters aren't counted. So there's a lot of characters you can make a chud. Intrigue challenge as the first challenge in this deck, but there's not so many that actually let you push the intrigue challenge through.
Yeah. So obviously you've also got crossing. I hear being able to do 4 challenges is quite useful in crossing to keep the other person on their toes. So Khal Drogo, who's the old classic Sylvan Core, he works pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, he was a standout card for Targaryen in the core set. He still is now. He's never stopped being one.
No.
Like, I think, yeah, how he's great is probably relatively obvious, but it really is worth emphasising that he is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I say in crossing, sometimes being able to go, I think, especially quite a common, I'm going to say that's not fair, I don't think it's a common counter, but sometimes you're playing crossing up against Reigns, you really don't want to do that intrigue first. And sometimes you kind of want to get out of the way because it's probably, as you say, it might be your weakest challenge. And obviously you might have other effects to the military, and obviously you definitely want to be doing power because that's how you win the game.
Yeah.
But so being able to do 2 militaries instead of that 1 intrigue can be really good, really game breaking. Not game breaking, it's probably exaggerating a bit, but it'd be that flexibility that not being able to run in and go, well, if they over defend, they're going to trigger Reigns and then do Game of Thrones. So that's a whole turn gone.
Yeah.
Or they filthy accusations kneel out my best character, and they've just. Although again, kneeling's not the end of the world for Targ, as we'll probably cover in a second.
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing I brought up.
Yeah.
So, the only downside of Drogo, essentially, in theory, is that you need to have extra bodies on the board to be able to push through the extra military challenges. Like, you can't just expect to stand all your people up and just do it with the characters you already have in play. Except, of course, in this deck, you can expect to do that. So in the character base for stand, I mentioned Dario. He can stand allies, companions, and mercenaries. You've also got Barristan, who, from all these other discard effects, quite often will be able to stand up. But definitely the key parts of that are in the non-character base, specifically with one of the other shiny new cards, Queen's Guard.
Yeah. This card of Marine is pretty good as a combination goes.
In theory, even with Missandei and Freedmen and so on, discarding a card from your hand should be a pretty legitimate cost in that, sure, you can get those characters into play for free or bring them in from the discard pile, but ultimately you're going to run out of cards in hand to be able to trigger Queen's Guard. Except with Marine, you're not. No.
Because you're getting free cards which are going away at the end of the turn anyway, so you might as well keep standing your character.
Yeah, with Queen's Guard out, Marine essentially says kneel Marine to put 3 stand tokens on Marine.
Yes. Because between Queen's Guard and also the ever reliable Plaza of Pride, which is only 2 of in this, because I'm assuming because you got 3 copies of
Queen's 3 Queen's Guards, you've got the 2 Waking the Dragons.
Yeah. It's you're gonna. The sound effects, it's just and are just pretty brutal, and it's one of these one of the old classic, going back a few cycles, ways of when crossing came prevalent. Baratheon did quite well because there were lots of kneel effects. Well, no, you don't have enough kneel effects to stop this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where not only are there not enough kneel effects, but they're also not as good as these stand effects. Like if we compare, say, Even-Handed Justice, I remember being quite excited when that card came out that, that was a really good kneel effect for Baratheon to get. So that one is pay 2 gold as an any phase action to choose a character controlled by each player and kneel them. So as the Baratheon player, you kneel your Shireen Baratheon or whatever, but you get to kneel their Khal Drogo. But now you're paying 2 gold and a card from your hand and kneeling one of your own characters to kneel one of their characters. And then they just put Queen's Guard on them and discard a card from their hand. And now they've paid the same gold, they've paid the same cost from hand, they've not had to kneel their character, and they get to stand that character another 2 times if they'd like to.
And potentially they've put Queen's Guard into play for free and got a character out of it.
Yeah, exactly. His start to discard Missandei to put Queen's Guard into play. Yeah, it's just... I think it's fair to call it a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, and I've said using a similar version of this, it is amazing how intuitive and how quickly, not amazing, but it's very intuitive. It's not I don't want to say it's not a hard deck to use because there's a lot of decision points in it, but it's not like was it the combo deck, which was a very hard deck to use. to get the stuff right, or even sometimes builders having to get all your stuff out in particular order. And that was actually quite fine art. Yeah, that's not a deck you could pick up and just do well with. You had to play with it a few times to really understand how everything works. This, after about 2 games, I felt very comfortable with how all the combinations worked. It's almost like playing Tyrell out of core. We're like, Randall stands a lot. How do I do that? All these cards in my hand make stuff stand because they're strength boosts. Amazing.
I'd say about the only complicated interaction in the entire deck is probably watch out with Waking the Dragon and with Aegon Targaryen if you're triggering Marine that round, because Aegon and Waking the Dragon take the character in question back to hand, and Marine discards your hand at the end of phase, and they happen in the same window, so the first player gets to choose which order those effects go in. So if you're first, great, you lose the cards to Marine and then the characters come back, but if your opponent is first player, they get to say, okay, well, Dario is going back to your hand now. And now you have to discard it. Yeah,
there's something we had. We actually, it's probably not going to come up at Worlds, so I wouldn't worry about it. But I was playing against the Faith Militant deck,
right?
And you had the robes when the character kneels by the Blanca location.
Yes.
Yeah, that came up and I went, right, so I can't use Marine if you're going first, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thankfully, one of the elements of this deck is it's got a few high initiative plots, but we'll get to that in a sec, I guess.
Yeah. Otherwise, I guess a lot of this is your normal kind of crossing stuff, special location-wise. Obviously, you've got free bottom, we all know how good that is now. Gates of the Moon, you don't care about the gold for your opponent because hopefully you're going to win before that's an issue.
Yeah,
and especially these days, 1 gold is probably not going to be game breaking. Obviously, Great Halls.
Obviously, often with unique locations, you're not thrilled when you draw the second copy, but in this case, it's just like, oh dear, what a shame! I have to discard that to his star instead of playing it. I have to discard that to Jitqui instead of playing it. I have to discard that. I guess you can't discard that one to Kotho. I discard that to Queen's Guard instead of playing it.
Yeah. So as you say, you don't care too much. And then obviously you got 3 nightmares because nightmare blanking stuff's good generally.
Yeah. It's one of those things where if you've got space in your deck, it's the best card to add in the game.
It's gonna be very weird when that cycles.
Yes, it is.
And Superior Claim, because winning by 5 with this deck's pretty easy, and power is how you win the game.
Yeah, it's one of the things I think is strongest about this deck is the way that it can pressure you on all 3 challenge types. So Intrigue probably the least, but the flip side of it, it sort of covers that gap with Intrigue through the fact that in the plot deck it's got 2 heads on spikes. So heads on spikes, obviously, it gets the chance to get you 2 power, and obviously that's what you're aiming for it to do. But regardless, it's still taking a card out of the opponent's hand. And then on the military side, you've got the March to the Wall in the plot deck, and then you've got the fact that you're doing extra military challenges from Khal Drogo.
You really putting the pressure on.
And potentially stealing their claim soak with Dario as well, because obviously like all of the 1-cost reducer chuds, for instance, are allies.
Yes. This is something I've noticed been mentioned on other things, and I want to see more. Is obviously ally. I mean, I know in version 1 used to be a real big downside.
Yeah.
And it just isn't really in version 2, and it feels a shame that it kind of should be. And obviously Dario's making a big inroads in making it more.
Yeah, he's also, if Dario's in your deck, makes it an upside.
Well, yes, for you, obviously, but this is something you do probably. I wouldn't say you need to consider, but if you are going to Worlds and you're making your deck, and do you wonder about some of those allies?
Yeah, it's one of the things where I wouldn't bother changing your deck based on it.
Yeah, but
I would definitely, when you're playing against the target player, actually, read the traits of your cards because it will matter.
Yeah. Yes, obviously, ally, companion, and mercenary. There's quite a few of those, and there's some pretty core cards which that will affect. And also, like seeing your opponent's second sons and standing them.
Yeah,
that's not bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so otherwise, so obviously Valada Harris, and it's something I was a bit surprised about, having had a bit of a break and come back, is Vala Maguris is, I wouldn't say disappeared, but it's not the common reset anymore.
No, I think it's just because a lot of the decks in the meta, at least before Free Folk came along, a lot of the decks in the meta weren't overly punishing on the military challenge. So it meant that when your opponent had a better board than you usually still had a board. So Valada Harris meant that you were taking away your opponent's ability to just like completely dominate the board with their characters. Like, you know, maybe they'll still have a better board than you, but they're not going to be able to keep, you know, 2 characters above cost 5. Whereas with Vala Morghulis, sure, you can clear their board, but you're also clearing your board and hitting your tempo, and the opponent will just be able to reflood better than you.
Yeah.
Now, with Free Folk, maybe that changes, because suddenly you've got a deck where it's like, oh, so I get to keep 10 gold worth of characters, so I'll keep these 4 then, and now I'm going to hit you for 2 claim, and it does, and you didn't get to keep a character anyway because I'd hit you for 4 claim round 1.
Yeah, part of me does wonder if Free Fate might see the rise of First Snow as a counter, because they rely a lot on their cheaper characters, as we talked about.
Yeah, opening First Snow against Free Folk can be really strong.
Obviously, it depends on your board state. One thing I didn't mention, I don't think we mentioned, obviously, his star is a king, which is a very important trait at the moment.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is one of the, I won't say one of the first Targ decks I've seen run this, but it's quite interesting Targ running King of the North, because they couldn't really be much further south. But obviously, is, oh no, I was wrong. For some reason I thought Aegon had the king trait. I'm thinking of was it Daenerys having the queen trait?
Yeah.
Obviously, yeah. That's one of the big ones. This doesn't even run Daenerys.
No, yeah.
Either copy. As core, or as the Americans say, I understand, the good one.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree that one of them is good and one of them isn't good. I think they're both good. But...
I would agree with that as well. But yeah, she's not bad. Not bad variant.
Yeah, I guess with her in a crossing deck, you kind of need to bring the dragons to justify her, and there just isn't space in the character list. All the other characters, or like nearly all the other characters, are doing stuff that's far more obviously important to the deck.
It's a very different deck, I think, at that point. If you're going down her, you got to leverage those dragons a lot more, and as you say, and I think there's a lot of characters you'd have to take out, which I'm not. Yeah, as you say, who do you take out? Yeah. It's hard to think of anyone that would be removed.
Yeah, but right now, the least important characters in the deck are the hatchlings.
Yes, they should just there because they're good, cheap, efficient, cheap characters.
Yeah, they're cheap characters with no attachments, so you don't have to worry about ward or whatever.
So I'm assuming the way this would normally work is if you've not had a great setup, you time a plenty, heads and spikes, and then probably win all you die or heads and spikes again.
Yeah, I believe Joe's approach was if you set up his star, then open heads on spikes. If you don't set up his star, open time of plenty to try and find his star. And
obviously he's expensive, so your heads on spikes might not be able to get him out turn 1 if you do draw into him. Or and then obviously you got your winner, you die is your closer. Because and I said to you in the chat the other day, I love the fact I went away and this became a thing, because this is one of those cards I looked at and went, this could either be really good for the game or it might just never see play. But actually, the fact and it is for me one of the most thematic plots.
Yeah,
because...
I'm a really big fan of it, just on every level. Like, I think it's fun. I think it's not just good, but it is good, and but not too good at the same time, because the downside is real.
Yes.
But it's also one of those cards where, for like what I'd call the kitchen table player, like the person who's not necessarily looking to go to tournaments, but still wants to play the game with their mates and have fun. It's a card that is fun for both players, I think. Yeah,
and it really, as you say, really brings the game down to that. Yeah, I've got to win this turn, or you are in top deck mode unless you've got a lot of reserve buffs. and you would need quite a few. Yeah, just such a great plot. But obviously, I assume you're hoping you've won on the second Heads on Spikes anyway.
Yes.
And you won't need it, but it is there. And obviously, King of the North is it's just a good plot. If your opponent hasn't got a king, and one of my favourite things about this is the amount of times I've played King of the North, and my opponent's just like, I've got a king in hand, but I now can't get him out.
I can't afford him because economy is triggered.
It's it's a fantastic card. I know some people have argued this potentially should have been on the restricted list. I'm going to disagree.
I think most of the people arguing that are Martell players.
Yeah, yes, Martell does particularly get hammered by this because the only way they can get a king is through taking a bucket load of wildlings.
But or by bannering for Hisdar or whoever.
Yeah, I guess you could banner in there as well. But if you're going pure Martell, you can't really. But as I said, if your opponent has a king, it's effectively a blank plot.
Yeah.
Although I was watching the other day. So I think it was your one of regional you went to. I can't remember if it was the semi or the final, and your opponent played this, and then you triggered Coho to go and get your attachment.
Yes.
Which is just I found quite amusing. It was just like, you can't trigger stuff.
My favourite one of those was earlier in that tournament. I was playing against Tagore, and he analysed the board, saw that I had a few triggered effects that he was scared of, and he didn't have a king, but he sort of took an attitude of, okay, I don't need to trigger effects this round, I just need to stop Wamma from triggering effects this round. Flipped the king in the north, and then I was like, Tagore, you do know that I've got the Wolf King out in play, right? And he flipped it when he didn't have a king and I did.
I'm guessing you won that game then.
I did win that game, yeah.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah, that was good times. But yeah, here it's just an extra cruel little trick that Tar can play. If they do set up Hisdar, and the opponent's is the sort of deck that relies on having triggers, then you can just say, nah, I'm just gonna hose you this round. You don't get to do anything this round. That's fine. Yeah.
So that is Tug. I'm just trying to think if there's any of the new cards will make their way. Oh, one might. So this is one. Oh well, a few. I've been playing with the. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Milanese market.
Milanese. I think.
Milanese. Basically, the version I was using had either Ravens, which this doesn't because this is crossing. I'm assuming you're trying to win before that really would have much of an effect.
Yeah. In the Marine one, obviously more important because you are going to be discarding 3 cards from round 1.
Yes, and also just to shut down my opponent's flea bottoms. I found this card pretty damn good. Because this kind of replaced Slaver's Bays for me because there's quite a few times you're only getting 1 gold from that anyway.
Yeah,
and this has a secondary ability which you're always hopefully triggering. So that could be quite a common card in there, especially with flea bottom not really being that badly hit by the restricted list. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. I think the only counter argument as far as this deck would say is that it's very tempo based. Like, so if we look at the economy, Gates of the Moon has no payoff and costs 1, but otherwise every economy card can pay for itself or better the round that you play it.
And I think that's the difference between crossing and not crossing. Because I assume we're going to see other variants of Targ that aren't just crossing in there. Probably Targ crossing will be the one you'll see later in the streams. I guess the other one is in the pit.
Daznak's pit.
Yeah, to getting a second challenge phase. That could be a card that sneaks its way in there.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because obviously it's stand each character. It's not stand each location. So the deck would have Flea Bottom Stain Out and Plaza Pride Stain Out. Yeah. But everything else, like the Queen's Guard limit will reset. Hisdar's limit will reset.
Because it's an additional challenge phase. It's not you're not restarting the phase. It's a new phase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if your opponent was relying on kneeling locations to deal with your challenges, so like if you're playing against, I don't know, like a Night's Watch defense that's, knelt its Castle Black and knelt its Abandoned Stronghold or whatever, then those stay knelt and you just get to bully them. And it's an expensive card in Daznak's Pit. It costs 2 to put into shadows and then 3 to bring out shadows. But of course,
I wonder if there's a card that would stop that.
Yeah, I wonder if this card could make that cost 0 to bring out shadows.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially a crossing, that could you could pretty much guarantee winning on turn 2 if you get a bit lucky with it.
Yeah, and I think obviously it adds to what we were saying about the attrition that the deck can produce. In that if you're going first and have Khal Drogo out, then you get to hit them for 2 military challenges, and then you get to hit them for another 2 military challenges, and then even if you haven't reached 15 power, you've probably destroyed their board at that point.
And how many times have person gone like, okay, I'll survive the 2 military challenges from Khal Drogo, and my board state's okay, I can now get to the next marshalling or next plot phase, I can then do my reaction, my counter, and try and stabilise. Oh wait, there's another challenge phase now, I've got 2 more military coming in, I now can't defend this. I have no way of doing anything.
I think it's an event where you need to go first to really leverage it, because you want to really be able to punish with those extra military challenges. But if we look at the plot lineup for the Tile Crossing deck, the Heads on Spikes, we've got 2 of them with 6 initiative.
Yeah.
March to the Wall has 8 initiative. You Win or You Die has 8 initiative. Valor de Harris even has 5 initiative. It's only King in the North and Time of Plenty, and often you're going to be opening Time of Plenty, in which case you're not going to really be playing this on round 1.
King of the North could be an interesting one to do it with, because obviously if you've shut your opponent down on all their tricks, getting 2 challenge phases out of that.
Yeah. If they're relying on using Gaston Grey or High Garden or whatever else to try to stop you, and you're saying, no, you don't get to do that this round, and now you don't get to do it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it could be kind of meta defining.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say that helps balance it a little bit is that due to a quirk of the rulings, it's completely free to cancel it with Hand's Judgment. Because
it costs 0. Because it's blank.
Because the cost is a dash. So the X on Hand's Judgment is undefined, and as per the rules, when X is undefined, X equals 0.
The other counter could be, and obviously a deck we're about to hit on, is Stark is quite good at the moment, and they have this guy called Bran.
Yes,
they
do have this guy called Bran.
He's pretty good at stopping this kind of thing.
He is.
So you possibly got to try and bait it out with either Nightmares or trying to do a Superior Claim.
Yeah, although I suspect possibly Superior Claim could be the card that you drop for this.
Oh, yeah.
Superior Claim, obviously, is great. It gets you 2 power. That's good. But this, assuming that you're in a position to be able to win the challenges on the second challenges phase, you're getting an extra power just from the crossing alone. Plus, you're probably getting another power claim. And if you're doing it on the You Win or You Die turn, then it goes turbo. So I think Superior Claim would be my hypothetical cut for Daznak's Pit.
Yeah. Okay, so that's potentially there. I don't think the dragons at the moment potentially.
I think I'd be tempted to put in a Drogon just because he can, he can back up your winning through military attrition game plan. Like if you get him out and Drogo out, and then have Plaza of Pride or Waking the Dragon to stand Drogon and get to win a military challenge, kill a 4 strength or lower character, get military claim, stand him, win a military challenge, kill a 4 strength or lower character, get military claim. I think even if he's just as a 1 copy, even though he doesn't support the general point of the deck, I think he's good enough that you can justify it, especially given that his Dar means you can ambush him in for 3 gold.
Yeah. Okay, so that is, because that is on ambush. Yep, march or ambush or bring out of shadows. Yeah. So that's
just in case it wasn't good enough.
Yeah, because why do you cover 2 of them? So that's Targ. Targ are looking pretty much like the clubhouse leaders again, and as we said, the FAQ with the restricted list has only made that stronger.
Yeah, it's curious. I'm like, it's possible that Danny has been thinking about second order interactions of like, well, now that Breaking Ties is going to be less problematic, does that mean that decks that have more answers to this sort of thing can become prominent?
Yeah.
Or it could be that the restricted list was designed months ago and just FFG take that slow to move.
Yeah, because it wasn't that long ago. Wars to Come was like 50% of a field.
Yeah, like my comment when I saw the restricted list was that was the perfect restricted list for straight after Euros.
Right.
But since then we've had 5 chapter packs. But it could be that it's still the perfect restricted list now. I need time to test with it. So my reaction when it first came out was quite a lot of disappointment, but I've got over that. I'm eager to see how the game shakes out.
And it is one of the things, like, if you go back long enough to, like, the first cycle where everyone wanted Tyrion and Tywin restricted, and the Hound, and all those effects, and the Miri to basically try and break up this Lanny Dragon. And what was it, by the end of the second cycle, Lanny Dragon was not a thing anymore. Miri hardly saw play.
It was Val Morghulis when that came out. It basically said, okay, so now the Lannister deck can't just flood with bigs and leverage its removal effects.
Yeah.
Because it was, the Gregor roulette, it was Miri's trigger, it was First Snow of Winter, and so on. And then Vala said, I don't really care that much about any of those, to be honest.
Yeah, and just that made that changed things, and it could be again that this changed things. So I would say, I personally think definitely Mace, Highgarden, and Fleabottom Breaking Ties. I think were combos that probably should have been on there. I think Wars to Come's questionable.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to be too sad that it's on there just because it was getting a little boring to play against.
Yeah. And as for it's not a card I went, well, why the hell was that on there? That's stupid. But it's one I'm like, I can understand it. It was out of the 5 cards. It was the one I went, okay.
I certainly wasn't clamouring for it to be on the list, but I'm not confused or sad that it's there.
No, I could probably think of 5 cards that I think should be on there before it, off the top of my head, and I think a lot
of them are in this deck that we're just looking at.
Yes, exactly. So I do think probably post Worlds or Starlight there could be another round of this, maybe.
Yeah,
but
I imagine so.
At the same time, sometimes I think you just need to let the meta sort itself out, and it quite often finds a way.
Yeah. So on that note, as far as teching against this, I know obviously you're still relatively freshly back into the game. So I don't know if you know all of the different things that you could do to tech against this, but you have at the same time been playing the Marine deck. So what's been annoying you when you've seen it across the table?
The brothers' robes, which again probably don't need to worry about unless you potentially to quote to quote Dan. Dan. Was it Dan? Anyway, trying to feel the person saying that. That's really disappointing. I need to talk about it. Anyway, you lose your first game and you go into the soup. And you don't know, and you've made this deck to beat the meta decks, to do really well, and then you end up playing against something which completely screws you over because you happen to be the one deck it's really strong against. I've not had too many issues yet. I mean, I've played about 8 games with it, and I've had a pretty good record. Martell was frustrating, mainly because of obviously all the kind of anti-challenge stuff and anti-fun stuff they like to do. Yeah. Stark actually. Well, that was quite annoying because obviously they have a lot of stuff that stops triggers. You got Cat who can go to a challenge. She can stop. She can stop you from sealing. Can stop Dario from triggering. You've got Milk in particular, although it's not that hard to get Milk off. It's still
you've got the 3 Viserys. You've got 2 Waking the Dragon in this list,
but it's still. Sometimes seeing that, having the answers and seeing the answers, it's not like Confiscation, which I can control that. It's right there. Yeah. It's seeing it. And I've only one game where I'd Valadaharis put Viserys at the bottom of the deck because just the way the maths worked out, he was the most least. And I think I got rid of an attachment. And then literally the next move was Hisdar getting Milk, and it's like, now I wish I'd marched instead. Just to get him, it's stuff like it. I think Martell's the one that I've had the most issue with. I don't know what your experience has been.
Yeah, I'd say that's very fair. I think also a certain plot that's probably overdue to become a force in the meta is Barring the Gates.
I love that plot.
I know you do. You're far more pleased. But that shuts down any card coming out of shadows.
Yeah.
It stops any card being ambushed in. It stops any card being flea bottomed in. It prevents Aegon's trigger even if you like played him in the marshalling phase. It stops Missandei coming into play. It stops a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and especially as we've had the new agenda spoilt for the 6th pack, I think that's a card which is going to come back into see a lot of play. Especially,
sorry, you go.
I was especially going to play Wars to come. I've been kind of building a Greyjoy Wars deck with that in mind, because the only trigger it stops really is me bringing the Fanatics out of the dead pile.
Yeah.
I can live with that. If I'm really honest. The rest of it, it doesn't run flea bottom, so I'm quite happy to for that. So yeah, I think but
it doesn't run flea bottom if it's running Wars.
Well, yeah, obviously it didn't before that. It was something I was working on. I didn't have flea bottom in there anyway, but I think that's definitely a deck, and they have a lot of location hate, so they can try and shut down a couple attachment hate if you can get the unopposed with Read Not So.
Yeah.
Get rid of the Queen's Guards. Get rid of Marine. Get rid of flea bottom.
Yeah. Getting rid of Marine is really important for this deck. If you can, Frozo it, or Frozen Solid it, or if you can Seize by the Guard, or if you can, control it with the Greyjoy cards.
And also the Drangod Fanatic as well is probably quite a good counter, because you've got Aegon's reaction. You could just stop that from working. You could potentially his star, right. So you're about to discard a card, are you? And you've got no gold left, so I know what you're bringing out. Well, bang, gonna stop that. There's a few. Well, it's just a fantastic card. That Drangod Fanatic.
Good old Vince.
Yeah, you can stop Quotho from coming into play, I believe, can't you?
Yeah, and they still have to discard the 2 Targaryen cards. Yeah, but Quotho stays in hand.
So there's I think Greyjoy potentially could be rising up, and especially also Targ Burns disappearing, and that was one of Greyjoy's biggest weaknesses. Yeah, and Greyjoy
obviously got some new toys relatively recently. They're due for a surge up. With the new Victarion and with the warship economy, so that you can actually realistically use the new Victarion.
I'm quite interested to make a deck with the new Victarion. I haven't really sat down and thought about it yet, but it's going to be probably one of the decks I stream with first of them, once I've kind of spent a bit of time and thought about it. I just think
it's definitely, again, to like I said with the Night's Watch before, it's one of the things I'm considering for Worlds is Greyjoy, just because I do think it can handle this Targ more often than not.
Probably also not a bad counter for the Free Folk, because Victarion being strength 7 and being able to nil location to stand him a few times.
Yeah, and like Asher's really good there as well, because she's got stealth on the intrigue, so you can stop Egret from being really annoying. And
I hear Greyjoy's pretty good at taking military claim.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to not be wiped off the table by Free Folk when you've got your 3 Iron Mines and your 3 Risen from the Seas. Yeah, and
Risen from the Sea making Victarion even stronger, and defend challenge even more. So, that's a deck I want to use, and I kind of want to use it also before the big box comes out, to go on a bit of a tangent, because I think then I'll be doing lots of pillage decks.
Yeah, I think at that point I'll either be playing the more fun, interesting stuff that isn't just loads of boats. Because I assume that will be too good for me to really want to play at that point. Or I'll be playing stuff to counter Greyjoy. Yeah, I think they're going to be, like when the Marteau box came out, they're going to be in the new hot for a little bit, just because they've got so many new cards. Yeah. Right, so the last deck, talk about, because I think we've covered most of the weaknesses to the Targ. Yeah, I think we've covered everything that I wanted to hit up, which was, cancel the good stuff, stop Marine from working. I guess stop jumpers. I guess also maybe Night's Watch with lots of Cravens and Milks, but then I guess because there's only so many attachments you can stop. Yeah, like Builders. Builders is an interesting one in that if the Targ Crossing sees Drogo round 1 and you don't see a Milk round 1, the Targ Crossing will just win. You cannot stop that. Yeah. But if it doesn't, then Builders is a reasonable. If the Builders can get set up. But the only problem then is that if the Targ deck sees his star, then it can king in the north and stop you getting set up. Oh. So then the Builders needs the target to not see Drogo or his star. So
I'm seeing some. What's his name? Scott Steiner maths there.
Yeah.
So the last one, and this wasn't the first deck we talked about because this is one of the decks that has been really hit by the restricted list because one of the best combos for it has just disappeared. Is Stark and Crossing, as we said, the theme here. So the one I got here is the one that won US Nationals. There's a few different variants, but again, the core of the deck is pretty much the same. The big downside, I think we probably should cover the downside because obviously you're going to have to make a tweak to this deck to make it legal, is obviously Breaking Ties and Flea Bottoms in the deck. So Breaking Ties most likely is going to have to go. Now, see, the downside to this being that Breaking Ties, Flea Bottom and Summer was a really good combo.
Yes.
Obviously, there's other...
And also, Loyalist as well is really good with it.
Yep, so there's quite a few good cards there just to bounce, bounce and then do what Stark does, horrible things, and win challenges really easily. So that going, I mean, I guess it's not like it's the deck's gone, it's unusable, you're not going to see this in play at tournaments. You also see Stark. Stark is in a really good place. Some of the new cards this cycle have been just phenomenal. Yeah. I mean, the fact that I've got her name now, not Daisy, the other Mormon lady.
Mage,
sorry. The fact that she was a really good card and does not see play anymore because she got replaced by a better card says a lot. So, again, obviously it's just Crossing. What's this one doing differently from the Targ one, though?
So the main thing this is doing differently, I guess, is it's focusing a lot more on controlling the opponent's board. The Targ deck doesn't really care what the opponent's board is doing. It'll try and attrition it away with the Drogo military claim, and it can pinch something with Dario, and that's nice. But it's not actually focusing on that. Whereas this list, you've got, we mentioned the Breaking Ties. Obviously, that's going. But you've also got the put to the sword, put to the torch to take out problem locations. You've got Winter is Coming to raise military claim. You've got Great John Umber, who's a machine for taking the opponent's board apart round one.
I'm going to be honest, I've been very disappointed with him so far because I've not seen him until I've had every game I've played with him. I've seen him after I've had 3 cards in the used play. I'm like, right.
Oh, that's irritating.
Yeah.
I have the knack for having Great John in play round one. And he's lovely, I can say that.
Oh, I can imagine. I'm going, man, if I had him right now, this would be so much easier.
Yeah. Also, this specific list is very light on ward. It's only got 1. I would expect 2 or 3 ward in most start decks, and that's another tool for it attritioning away the board. And we've also got Bolton Flayer in the character base. There's a lot of cards there that say, I'm going to ruin your day.
Yeah, the one thing I was surprised about is there's no lack of Frozen Solid.
Yeah, I guess they've just chosen, like the people that made the US Nationals winning deck chose to go put to the torch over Frozen Solid in terms of how they were going to handle locations.
I guess, and also when you're running 12 events, something's got to be dropped.
Yeah, certainly.
And it's hard to know what to drop here because one of my favourite cards in this deck is I Am No One.
Yes.
And if you can combo this up right, so if you don't know, because this is a relatively new card. Yeah, relatively new. Not really seen much play that I've seen.
Yeah, no, it was a real sleeper. Like when it came out, I didn't really see anyone. Like I saw it sort of seeing a little bit of play, but certainly I didn't see it being a force in Stark decks. And it really feels like in the last couple of months, it's become that staple, like 2 or 3 off card in most Stark decks that I've seen.
And that comboed with Walls of the North, Sansa.
Yes.
And you have Septimore Dean out, so she's getting Renowned and +2 Strength. So she's now Strength, possibly 6. Yeah. Possibly, it depends. Obviously, she has that downside. But with Stealth and Insight.
Yeah, Stealth, Insight, Renowned, non-kneeling.
That's
and then you can use off to Goldtown as well if you want to give her the military icon.
And draw a card.
Yes.
Which is so that's a pretty good combo. All things considered. Obviously, you can also do it on Arya. You won't get the Renowned, But if you're getting Scepters and Modines out, she is a Tricon. Not kneeling. Obviously, it has stealth already, but potentially that's 3 more cards you're drawing. That card, it kind of took me by surprise, but the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, no, that makes complete sense.
Yeah. And it touches on one of the things this deck does, which is like the Targ deck, it focuses on getting multiple use from characters. So I Am No One is not kneeling to attack. Great John Umber can stand himself. The Northern Armory can stand a character. Wyman Manderley can stand himself. Rob Stark can stand everybody.
Yeah, well, Wyman Armory stands himself and draws a card. That is just the bonkers part of that for me.
Yeah. I'd say the main... Sorry, Hugo.
Oh, no, and the fact it's 3 times around.
Yeah, he is one of the standout cards of this cycle, along with Marine and Hisdar from the Targ deck. I'd say those 3 are the top 3 cards for me.
So, I was saying before, I was playing with my friend Dave yesterday, and he's bought the new packs. He hasn't kept up too much with some of the cards. He knows the cards for the decks he plays. He doesn't tend to read the other cards that much. And he saw this and he had to read it because he was just, when I was explaining to him, he didn't believe me initially. And he said, "This is just basically incredibly good Jon Snow." I went, "Yeah, it is. It's Jon Snow on steroids, pretty much." And obviously comboing so well with Rob, who then stands your entire board.
Yeah, simply having that on-demand sacrifice trigger. So whenever you want to, if you've got them both out, you can get a mass board stand.
Yeah,
for no effort. It's so good. I missed off Wolf King, by the way, when I was listing off the various... The
Wolf King's obviously not kneeling. As long as there's no king, you're not kneeling. When no. Oh, not kneeling. Oh, no, sorry, I'm thinking of King Rob. You just don't kneel on the first military. Which then brings him to a card which you've not really seen since Core with the original Smash Bros. Yeah,
this is doing the job of Khal Drogo in this deck, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got then the Storm of Swords. So you can have... Again, like we talked about with Targ, being able to have 2 militaries and crossing can be really useful because sometimes there's a challenge you just can't get off. So, Storm of Swords with Wolf King or with Great John Umber out. And that's 2 challenges where you can potentially just not really kneel anyone, or even better, I Am No One and Great John Umber. And you're stealthing someone, you're intimidating someone. You're just wrecking their board. It's a very nasty way. Obviously, back before I took my break, Stark were very much the control-y faction, and this just seems to brought them very much into an aggressive. I'm going to do all this stuff, and you're not really going to have a response to it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the main difference between this deck and the Targ deck we just looked at, because you'll notice there's a lot of the same stuff. There's the extra challenge game. There's the I'm going to use these characters multiple times. I'm going to push with renown. I've got my superior claim and so on. I think the primary difference is that the Stark deck doesn't have as much efficiency in getting characters into play, but it has a lot more what I'd call like gas in the tank, to do the Americanism. In that, rather than depleting your hand with these effects, you're taking in more and more cards, and often are going to be actually discarding cards to reserve, because you've got the insight from the I Am No One, you've got Wyman Manderley's up to 3 times around draw, then you've got some extra draw here and there from the likes of Umber Loyalist and the Blackfish and so on. You've got Summer, who's going to be recurring cards back to hand. The Targ deck, the plot line, you'll notice, had You Win or You Die as a source of getting extra cards. Here, instead of You Win or You Die, we've got Summer Harvest as an extra source of econ to make up for not having that ability to cheat stuff into play in the way that the Targ deck could.
Something that I learned, I experienced when I was playing of it. I was pretty much every turn discarding something to reserve, just because you say there is so much draw. I mean, obviously you've even got a bit more conditional, less likely to get, but you've also got Maester Lewin with Rob. And you've got Summer and Bran, which probably you're not going to use that much, but it is still potential card draw. It's really weird how Stark had gone from having such little card draw to such amazing card draw.
Yeah, there's a point where, like, White Harbour, which is, in my opinion, an absolutely fantastic draw card, isn't even in this deck, not even as, like, 1 copy. it came out in the same pack as Umber Loyalist, which is in this deck.
Right.
But the guys that made the deck are clearly like, no, I don't need it.
That's the one where if you win a challenge, you reveal the top 2 cards from your deck. Your opponent chooses one to go in your hand. The other one goes into the bottom of the deck.
Yes. So basically like a reverse Dawn.
Yeah.
You have to win the challenge instead of lose it. Your opponent gets to choose the card instead of you.
Yeah.
But like, you know, all your cards are in the deck because they're good, right? Like
that is the theory. Yeah.
The top 2 cards of your deck is still going to be a card that you're not devastated to see.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, obviously, I always fear with that kind of deck you're going to draw a dead character. But then I guess unless an expensive one, you've got Summer.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think the only plot potentially might actually worth taking out Breaking Ties for, which I was a bit surprised not to see, was Time for Wolves to find Summer. Potentially, I think that's probably the swap out there. Just being able to get Summer on demand, get him into play, get a character at your dead pile or discard pile, particularly Bran if you're worried about events. And then obviously if you've got Manderley out, you then put him into the discard pile for flea bottom to bring out every turn. So I think you're going to see this. I think Stark in some form or other is still going to be very good. I guess one card maybe, again, I'm sure there's reasons for not having it, was it Winterfell Castle? What might be quite good in this?
I guess the problem is that a lot of the time, because there's no cheating characters into play effects, your board won't necessarily be that big. So committing multiple characters into multiple challenges can be quite tough. You're sort of having a smaller board and using the stand or the non-meal to get characters into all the challenges anyway, rather than going for the I'm going to commit lots to it.
And I just thought, obviously, I am no one also means you lose your faction affiliation.
Yes, that's a good point. I'd forgotten until you said it.
Yeah, I did. I kind of said it and looked forward about it and went, oh yeah, actually. So yeah, that does make sense. And I guess you got the crossing challenge. You're just kind of going overkill at that point. Yeah. But so that's Dark. I guess the way. How do you counter this one then?
I guess before we go on to the counters, it's probably worth highlighting that they've received a couple of really important cards since this list came out.
Okay.
So in the 4th chapter pack, Music of Dragons, we've got Mira Reed.
Oh yes, she's pretty.
Yeah, she is pretty. She's a stealth Chud. She goes perfectly with all of the sacrifice tech that the deck's already running. You know, your Wamma, Manderley and whatnot. And she also can blank characters. So she's a good example of how to handle the target deck. In that, if you're going first as the start player, your first action can be to bring her out of shadows, be it marshalling or challenges. Bring her out of shadows and blank Hisdar.
Yeah. And then sacrifice a character, which is incredibly easy to do now for Stark.
Yeah.
So she's
put it back in, and then she's ready to be triggered again. Because that is one thing you can do if you do have the excess gold, which perhaps in this specific list of Stark you don't, but often you may well do.
Later in the game, yeah.
You can blank her, and the fun, like the hilarious trick you can do that never actually comes off, but in theory is really cool, is you can bring Umber Loyalist out of the discard pile with Flea Bottom, draw 2 cards, bring Mira Reed out of shadows to blank him, and then sacrifice the Umber Loyalist with Wamma Manderley, put Mira back in shadows, and you've paid 2 gold, one from Flea Bottom and one from Mira, but you've drawn 2 cards out of it and got to use the Umber Loyalist in a challenge.
Wamma, some of the stuff you come up with, like I was watching that video and you were, Rebecca was saying you were, frozen solid in your own armories.
Yeah, that was fun.
To stand them and then sacrificing the attachment so you could use it again.
I loved that day. That was really good fun.
I assume she's probably going to be a one of in there. Would you want more than that?
This list, I'd say 1, maybe 2. In some other Stark lists that aren't bothering to use up spaces with some of the stuff like Off to Goldtown and Superior Claim that maybe you wouldn't put in a non-crossing list. I think you could see her at 2 or 3. Sorry.
I was going to say, no, after you, sorry.
That's cool. I was going to move on
to
the other card that I think goes really well with Mira and helps you get that sacrifice trigger if you don't see Wyman. which is in the latest chapter pack. I don't know how you pronounce it. Skagos.
Right.
Skag. We'll call it Skag. So that's, you get to kneel it and sacrifice a standing start card to search your deck for a card with the same title and put that card into play. Which is really, really good for a lot of reasons. So just to highlight some of them, because it's one of those cards where I think anyone who looks at it might see that it's quite good, but a lot of the specific stuff you can do might go over people's heads. So first of all, if you haven't seen Wyman and you've got like a Sansa in play or whatever, you can sacrifice her to get your Rob trigger, to get your Mira trigger, and so on. You can also change versions of a character. So if you're running, like I've got a Stark deck currently built that's got 2 copies of the 4-cost Caitlyn and 1 of the 7-cost. So you can pay 4 to get Caitlyn into play, use her. Oh, I guess not use her in a challenge because she has to be standing. But you pay 4 to get Caitlyn into play, and then swap her out for the 7-cost version, and it's essentially been an economy card at that point. You can change different types of cards with the dire walls, so you can, use the Shaggy Dog attachment, say, to get challenges through unopposed, and then sacrifice it for a character to soak military claim with. Or you can even do that with the Summer attachment, where it lets you kneel a character to put them in the military challenge, and then you can sacrifice him to get the character version of Summer and get a card back from discard. Aside from that, you can also use it to move attachments around. So, like for example, you Frozen Solid, one of their basic, maybe like in that target, you Frozen Solid the Plaza of Pride, and you're happy with that, and then they play Marine, and you're like, oh, I wish I'd save Frozen Solid for that. Now you can use Skagos to sacrifice the Frozen Solid on the Plaza of Pride, search your deck for another Frozen Solid, and put it into play on the Marine. Right. Which is a good use. Or probably the best use when it comes to moving attachments around is Ward. Ward is always going to be standing. And if a character changes control during a challenge, they're just removed from the challenge. So you can ward a character, go in on them, go in with a challenge, and then you can either then, after you've knelt them, sacrifice ward, giving that now knelt character back to the opponent to take one of their standing characters, or you can sacrifice ward after they've defended to effectively remove one of their defenders from the challenge.
Allowing you to get you win by 5 triggers off, or get unopposed, or
push through military claim if you couldn't otherwise. So there's a few different tricks you can do with that. Then also you've got Flea Bottom, so you can use Flea Bottom to bring in a version of the character that's going to go to the bottom of your deck at the end of the phase. Then you can sacrifice them to get in a permanent version that isn't going to go to the bottom of your deck at the end of the phase. And I'm sure there's stuff that I've missed, like
removing milk.
Removing milk from a character. Removing terminal attachments generally. So, obviously, like the crossing list we've been looking at only has Northern Armory for a start card that can take Frozen Solid, but you might be running a version with like White Harbor or Winterfell Castle or whatever else, being able to sacrifice it to go and fetch a version of it that's not got the milk on it. Sorry, the Frozen Solid on it. There's a lot of tricks you can do. I didn't even really cover the comes into play effects. So like just playing Summer, triggering him, then sacrificing him to get another copy and triggering that copy as well, or playing Umber Loyalist, triggering it to draw 2 cards and then sacrificing it. Sure, you have to discard 2 cards, but then the new one comes into play and you get to draw another 2 cards. Or Riverrun Minstrel, getting to play Riverrun Minstrel, trigger it to get a power, and then sacrifice it to go and get another copy and get another power. It's almost countless the number of tricks you can do.
I'm gonna be honest. I'd thought of some of those, but as you're going on, I'm like, that's good. I've not thought of that. I've not thought of that. I was a bit surprised when I saw the score there. I was like, I think it got like a 4.7 out of 5. I was like, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was that good, but hearing
it's one of those things where if it could do one of the things that I've listed, then probably you don't include it unless it's a very niche deck.
Yeah.
If it could do half the things I've listed, then probably you include 1 copy. But when it can do so many different things, and some of them are reactive to stuff your opponent might be trying to do to stop you, some of them are proactive and letting you push stuff at your opponent or construct your own board. But there's so many different tricks you can do that basically you're almost never going to want it, not want it on the board if you're a start player.
I just thought of another one you could do.
Oh yeah.
After challenges are declared and your guy you need to block the challenge has been stealthed, you sacrifice him to go for your deck and get the same one out and then block the challenge.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a nasty card. Kneel it and sack, yeah. And in some respects, you might even not. The shadows bit is almost unnecessary. This one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my one problem with the card, is that it feels like a waste of shadows.
Because
I'm a traditionalist. I like my shadows cards to do stuff when they come out of shadows.
Yeah.
When they come into play, like Egon, I think is a really good card where his reaction isn't specific to coming out of shadows. So you can marshal him if you just want to get the card to hand for later. But you do have the option of bringing him out of shadows to get in the challenges phase, and then he's more expensive. And I think that's really cool design. Whereas Skagos, the only reason I can think of why you might want to put it in shadows is if you wanted to pretend it was something else.
Yeah, I guess when we get more shadows cards later on, but you are paying an extra gold to basically bluff.
Yeah.
I guess, but obviously with the Shadows agenda, that might be less.
Yeah, with the Shadows agenda, it means that you can bring it out for 1 cost instead of paying 2 for it.
Yeah.
In a pinch, it gives it a little bit more versatility. But yeah, that's my only criticism of it, is the Shadows keyword feels a bit wasted there compared to some of the other cards.
There's been a couple this cycle like that, but I guess you only get 2 cycles for these cards. You kind of got to make the most of it.
Like, to look at the other stock card in the in that chapter pack, Bear Island Scout, that costs 2 and has a reaction to being marshalled. That could just as easily cost, Shadows 0 and have a reaction to coming out of shadows.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame it was almost a shame this didn't come out last cycle. Might have seen some play.
Yeah, I do quite like the Bear Island Scout, but I think it's a bit of a more specific deck. Like, I think that with passing the Black Gate, which is you knew your faction card and reduce the cost of each start character you play, then you can spew them out because you pay 1, you get the first one, trigger it to get the second, pay 1, trigger to get the third, pay 1, trigger to get Daisy, pay 3, and then you've spent 6 gold, but you've got 4 characters out, one of whom has X strength, where X is the number of characters out. Yeah.
And there was something I did mess around with was a Mormont deck a little bit because of when what's it, the big Mormont came out, and obviously and you've got the army Mormont army as well.
They don't discard a gold from it to make House Mormont not kneel for military.
I believe that's the one, and it was the idea of a crossing deck, and I actually had Stormer Swords in that one. But it was more, the problem was there wasn't enough Mormont cards at that point to really make it, I think, leverage the whole Mormont ability. Yeah. Whereas this might actually, I wouldn't say
it could be worth revisiting.
Could be worth revisiting.
Not for, Worlds or anything. But...
No, it definitely is a fun one. There's that was the other disappointing thing. I also thought about doing Banner Dragon, but John O'Mormont doesn't have the Mormont trait.
No, he was cast out of the house.
So I guess the counters for this are similar to the counters to the Targ deck.
Yeah, I mean, anything that counters crossing is going to counter both versions for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I guess the difference with Stark is that you can't rely as much on just hitting their stuff they've got on the board, because they are going to have that ability to take stuff to hand, to keep a hand in a way that the Targ deck can't so easily. So I guess with Stark, you've got to play more of a tempo game, because they aren't going to have trouble having cards in hand. What they're going to have trouble doing is committing cards to the board, because the econ is a little tighter. They've got quite a few expensive characters that they want to play, and they can't cheat them into play, and they don't have Hisdar to reduce the cost of them. Yeah. So if you can play you know, like for example, in the most recent pack, we got a pinch of powder, which returns a character to hand if you win on attack by 5 or more strength on intrigue or power.
Yeah.
And obviously, crossing decks quite often will let challenges at them go through a bit easier because they need the characters standing to be able to initiate all 3 challenges.
Yeah.
So if you can start bouncing the big characters like Wyman, like Rob, like Eddard, like Great John, then it can be a bit tougher for the Stark deck to actually sort of get a stranglehold on the board.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously that kind of goes into the Martell theme we were talking about, wasn't it? Where just disrupting using the and obviously this doesn't this doesn't use Winterfell either, so you're a bit more susceptible to like Gaston Grey's Prince's Pass.
If you can milk or Nightmare's Caitlyn, then you can control that stuff. And obviously this deck does run the King in the North itself, but at the same time the only king it has is the Wolf King attachment. So if you have a way of dealing with attachments, then being able to use the King in the North stops a lot of triggers in start. Like it stops all the Skagos bullshit that we were talking about. Yeah. It stops, Great John from standing. It stops Wyman from triggering at all. It stops Rob from triggering at all. It stops the Armories from triggering.
It's definitely a card. It's definitely a card that would really hurt you if you have to play it and you haven't got your own king out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then barring the gates, like with Targ.
Yeah.
There's so many comes into play again, especially with Skagos and Mira added. Yes.
So and obviously you've got the Bolton Flares as well, which are coming out of Shadows. I guess with that one you then probably just marshal them if you really need it.
Yeah.
Because I guess actually this is another one. This is probably another card that didn't really need to be Shadows, isn't it?
The Flare, I can at least see the logic. Like it can be fun to leave the opponent guessing about whether you've got put to the sword or whatever, and then say, surprise, you have to kill the Chud.
Yeah, I guess you do it right as the last action before the challenge phase ends, and then you go, and that guy's dead, and now you're getting marched. Or something like that.
You do a military challenge, they overcommit on defense because they don't want to let you set up the March to the Wall. Yeah. And then you bring out the Bolton Flare, their character dies anyway, and you get to march them. Not that this specific list is running March to the Wall.
No, but yeah, there obviously could be variants that do. Cool, so that's sort of the main 5. I guess just quickly touching on some of the other factions we haven't really mentioned. I mean, really quick, if we are going to see them. Obviously, Greyjoy, I guess we're looking at Crossing or Wars, probably Crossing.
Yeah, I'm also partial to Fealty. As I mentioned before, I actually forgot to mention that in the Crossing decks generally, that they need to be able to get on the board quite quickly, just by the nature of what their agenda is. And one of the good things Fealty does is it just gives you an extra gold round one.
Yep.
Which is good, yeah. It's good for obvious reasons. Like in a Wars to Come meta, it's less important because the games are going to be going longer and having that early tempo doesn't matter as much. But in a Crossing meta, Fealty is actually quite a good response.
I guess it wasn't for the free fake. I guess Kings of Summer might not be awful, but I guess you're limiting your plot selection by doing that.
Yeah, the moment the opponent knows they don't have to worry about nothing runs like the cold and first snow of winter.
Yeah, that's not great. I guess and then obviously Tyrell. Obviously Tyrell seemed to me to be potentially. I know they became quite boring for a while because they were doing so well and in the Wars meta and with the Mace race. But Breaking Ties going really brings back some of the old staple characters.
Yes, Randall obviously being the main one. I think Tyrell and Banner Rose as well are probably two of the biggest sort of states of flux in the meta at the moment. In that Tyrell could be near enough a non-factor at Worlds because their principal deck got demolished in the FAQ. Yeah. Or they could win Worlds because they've regained Randall.
Yeah, and
he can be that good when he's unchecked.
Oh, he is, especially in a Crossing deck. When you go to the third challenge, he's standing from that. Plus, you just need to give him a strength boost, which isn't that hard. And then that's 2 challenges he's done on your Crossing. Potentially got 2 renowned, and he's still standing to take whatever's coming back at him. Yeah. I think Ryan Woody was talking about what he took to Nationals, which was a Quovo Knights deck going through to get knighted and knighting Randall with the Jason Pavilions.
Yeah.
So obviously he automatically stands every time he goes into a challenge because of that. That could potentially be something to look at, potentially, I guess. I don't know how janky that is potentially, and how if it wouldn't be quite fast enough.
Oh, I think that's a very good deck.
Okay.
And Cohort is a very good answer to like the Targ, because any deck where you can search Seized by the Guard on demand is going to have a good matchup against Marine, basically.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, and search for Milks.
Yeah, Milk for Histar, Seized for Marine, and then that Targ deck still like is a force, but it becomes a lot less scary at that point.
You take it, especially take out that economy from Histar. That hurts the deck a lot. It's running very light on economy otherwise. Yeah. Okay, so that's those two. Obviously, we already talked about Martel, really, and Martel kind of seemed to be that kind of. I guess Martel Wolves could be fairly strong.
Yeah, I won't lie. I'm just not very good at judging Martel at all, so I probably prefer not to say anything just because I'll say wrong stuff.
Martel always seems to have that faction, even when they're not great. They always have the opportunity. It's quite a hard faction to use at times. It's something I've never overly done well with, except for a generic kind of. I don't want to say big guys Martel, but the one that doesn't rerun that many tricks. It's more about just leveraging Doran's game.
Yeah, like having someone always tells to cancel the reset.
Yeah. Obviously, but again, that was coming out of Martel Wars, and they really want Flea Bottom.
Yeah, I think there is a Wars list with Doran's game and not Flea Bottom that would be good. And I think there'll be crossing lists with Doran's game and Flea Bottom, but not Wars, obviously.
Yeah.
That will be good. But yeah, it's not a faction that I'm particularly coherent with.
That's fair enough. Night's Watch, we kind of already talked about. Probably again, they've had a big boost from Breaking Ties, kind of being restricted. Wall decks can potentially come back.
Yeah, the big problem Night's Watch have got is that King in the North still hoses them for a round.
Yes,
but that's a lot less of a problem than King in the North and Breaking Ties hosing them across 2 rounds.
Yes, and potentially, as I think I've seen some start decks at one point, King of the North, was it the Withering Cold and Breaking Ties? So you're just really shutting down what they can do, and the whole, if you kneel the wall to obviously for Withering Cold turn, you can't kneel it again the turn afterwards. So
Withering Cold's an interesting one in that it was everywhere for like a month or so, and I think now there's so much stand in the game.
Yeah, I can see
the decks
that.
that want to leverage Withering Cold, it's like, well, half the time I'm going to be playing a deck that's going to keep its board stood anyway.
Yeah, no, I can see that, especially with Targ being so prevalent, and Targ have probably the most stand.
Yeah, between Targ having Queensguard and Stark having Rob and increasingly easy ways of triggering him.
Well, they always thought Stark with a faction that could leverage it almost as a reset.
Yeah, with like having the Intimidate and the stand effect.
Yeah,
you just get to take out the opponent's board without really hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Except nowadays you don't really get to take out your opponent's board in too many matchups for Withering Cold to make 7 card plot decks. In Wars you might still see it, but Wars you'll see a lot less of generally anyway. And
I guess the last one, Baratheon, and they still. And Lannister. I assume Lannister's just crossing. We're going to see Lannister.
Yeah, I think there is more on the table for Lannister, but I don't know how yet. I wouldn't be surprised if Lannister does better at Worlds than people expect, but I don't know how. Whereas Baratheon, I think I would be surprised if it does better at Worlds than people expect.
The thing from the outside looking in on the whole way playtesting works, Lannister still seem to have the impression I get is they seem to get a bit of a stigma for how good they were in the first cycle and a half or so, and how many good cards they got, and it seems like they just don't want to give them good cards.
I think they suffered a lot in cycles 3 and 4, Lannister, and then this cycle they've suffered not because the cards haven't been good. Certainly some of them haven't been good, but I think they've suffered more in that they are being positioned as the Shadows faction,
and there's not enough there to help them out yet.
Yeah. Next pack when we get the agenda and they get the Shadows Cersei and they get the attachment that gives an attached character +1 strength of each card in Shadows.
Yeah.
I think Lannister will be able to be more of a force. But yeah, right now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and it's the last one. Baratheon just still seem they've had some really good cards in the last like cycle ish. You know, a lot of the knights they've had have all been really good.
Yeah, Courtney Penrose, the Bastard Knight Solomon, Justin Massey coming out in quick succession.
Justin, the bastard god, no bastard god goes. So
nice one.
Sorry, he's just they're really good cards, but they still just double down on the two things Baratheon has, which is power challenges and nil. And as we already talked about, nil's not really cutting it right now. You know, Melisandre kneeling one person a turn isn't really going to do much when you can just stand them anyway, most likely. And yeah, the power challenge thing, I mean, it's cool, and it's obviously how you win the game, but that's it. They seem to need more tricks, is I guess what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it was a good restricted list for Baratheon, because they, you know, there was some Barrow Wars decks, but broadly they weren't using Flea Bottom, they weren't using Breaking Ties.
Although they had just got a mace that made Breaking Ties quite good.
They did. The timing was unfortunate in that regard. But yeah, like they have a lot of those good non-loyal mid-range bodies, like Courtney Penrose, Buster Nightsong, Justin Massey, but then also, you know, like Davos Seaworth, and then some of the, like, you know, like Valyrian's crew, which might now actually see play in a good deck now that it won't expect to just be bounced by every single deck in the meta.
Yeah.
So I think there is something for Baratheon, but I don't think that it's as good as what's there for other factions still.
And the other issue I seem to find looking at Baratheon is they seem to be very reliant on their 4 cost and above characters. All the new good characters have been 4 cost or above. The issue there being that makes them really susceptible to Valadar Harris, especially when Bob seems to still be the win condition.
Yeah, it's like in the cheaper bracket for Baratheon, it's still really just Shireen, Crescent, then maybe like Edric Storm or Devon Seaworth, like if you're running a more dominant space build, and then just the R'hllor package. With the R'hllor package generally being weaker due to Neil being weaker, as we've discussed.
Yeah,
I think Barra, if there is a good Baratheon deck, it's going to be a banner to something with good chuds. So yeah, maybe Banner Dragon for, you know, like his not his stuff, although probably he'd go in it, but like, you know, like Jorah and Missandei and that lot, or the Banner Wolf, and bringing in the start ladies like Arya and Sansa, and getting Bran in as well, and so on.
Banner Rose, which is a deck I used for a bit.
Banner Rose for Knights is the other one, because obviously, as we discussed, a lot of Barra's more recent good cards are Knights, and getting Green Apple Knight alongside them is really good.
The other one, since she's there, you go. I think I was doing the Harpoon Marge and the the intimidating event, Lord Renly's Ride, and the stand and the Courtesans of the Rose to stand Bob, not Courtesans of the Rose. What's the stand? It was plus when you get Strength Boost nil to stand the character.
High Garden Courtier.
That's the one, because obviously even if they don't defend, Bob intimidates someone. That's then up to strength, and then he gets to stand. But it's still basically leverage Bob.
Ultimately.
And also, one thing I surprisingly always found with Baratheon, and I'm you might have found the same, but I always found Baratheon struggle a lot with aggro decks.
Again, because they don't have the good chuds, so their lists tend to be top heavy, which means they get hurt by aggro.
And obviously, as we already talked about, Free Folk being quite popular, that's just another nail in the coffin, I think, for Baratheon, I would say. But it's a shame. Baratheon really needs some help, I think, because they still. I just got that whole thing. They might not be good till they get their big box. They just need new themes, I guess, or just R'hllor to do more.
Yeah, I think they have had some other good cards recently, like Privileged Position, I think is really good. And in the next pack, they're getting Banished from the Light, which is a really good removal card for them. But yeah, broadly, I think they still just need some more good cards.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that comes in the next box, whether it comes in the next cycle. But yeah, they need something.
Yeah, but
and they're not getting it by Worlds.
No, they're not. It's a shame. You like to see all the factions doing well, but obviously it's just a hard thing balancing. There's always going to be one faction that was like the poor men. Also, it was not long ago. If you took Night's Watch or Tyrell to a tournament, you got a little pattern soldier going. Oh mate, it's nice just being loyal and trying.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But there we go. But okay, well, I think that's kind of hopefully prepped everyone for Worlds who didn't know what we're looking for, and hopefully it'll give us some ideas. I don't think they put the streaming schedule up as we record this.
No, I don't believe they have yet.
But I want to say the day 1 and day 2 is the Thursday and the Friday, with the cut being the Saturday.
Day 1A and 1B on Thursday, Friday,
and then
the cut day on Saturday. I don't know how that clashes with like L5R, but with Netrunner Dead and Star Wars having its own world, it's basically just Thrones, L5R, and Rune Wars. I think.
You don't think Rune Wars are going to be in competition for some?
I'm sure it will be everyone.
Oh, sorry, anyone who does play Rune Wars, but
all half dozen of you.
Yes. I'm just trying to. I want to say the L5R cut is the Sunday, but I could be wrong off the top of my head.
Yeah. I think L5R might be like a day after Thrones on everything.
Yeah, it is. So so the cut's on the Sunday. So the Swiss might be competing with L5R, and I hate to say it, but I think L5R. I imagine the Swiss. You get the Thursday Swiss, the Friday Swiss. I think probably be L5R.
That's fine. I'm playing in the Thursday Swiss.
Oh, cool. Well, hopefully we'll see you on there. But and then obviously the cut will obviously the
Yeah, you'd hope the cut of Thrones takes priority over day 1B of the Swiss of L5R.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so. But yeah, guys, do look out. Obviously, be on their Twitch channel. We will not be hijacking the stream this year as we did last year because I got a lot of trouble for that.
Your YouTube account got messed up so much you had to quit the game over it, didn't you?
Well, not quite. I had to go to Twitch for a while. But yeah, I got a slap on the wrist. So hopefully the commentary will be better this year. Is all I can say. Or someone else will set up a YouTube account and hijack the commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I hear the banter guys like being quite banterous on that type of stuff. But anyway, Wamma, thank you very much for coming on and breaking down the meta.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me on.
And guys, do come back for some more deck talk where hopefully Wamma will win Worlds and we'll get him on to talk about how good his deck was.
I will be happy if I make day 2, to be honest.
But as always, guys, hopefully if you did enjoy it, do like and subscribe. And until next time, it has been emotional.